Hello there. Welcome to my show, COVID-19 Update by Heerak. This is October 7th, 2020, and it's the day of vice presidential debates between Kamala Harris and Vice President Mike Pence. And this is a chance for Mike Pence to prove that he is worthy to become president in 2024 when he probably will run as a candidate for US president in 2024. Um, they will see him debate Kamala Harris and see whether he can debate, number one. Number two, whether he has ideas that they like, that they will be willing to support. And number three, whether Mike Pence can beat Kamala Harris in debate. Because it's like a boxing match. No one likes a loser who, no one cheers for the one who loses in the boxing match. You know what I'm saying? So obviously, if they feel like Mike Pence is allowing Kamala Harris to take a jab and knock him out on the debate floor, they're not going to vote for him, even if they're Republicans. You know how people are. They like a winner, they don't like a loser. So when President Trump debated Joe Biden, as I said, I believe he won because no one likes someone who uh, lets the opponent walk all over them in a debate, presidential debate. That's how Mike McCain lost. He let Obama walk all over him. Nobody likes a nice guy on the debate floor. Nobody likes a nice guy on a boxing match. And politics is politics. It's a type of national sport. Nobody wants you to play nice in the election debates. It's just nice guys never win. Um, Nice guys finish last. That definitely is an American saying because it holds true for America. It's a United States cultural thing. The nice guys don't win. It just, I mean, it's, you make what you want out of it, but every high school, it's the bullies who are the popular guys, right? You know, um, yeah, I mean, bullies dominate, jocks or whatever, they bully people who are kind of like bullies. They're the ones who are the most popular people in school, right? I mean, they may not be actively very mean bullies, but popular people are not very nice. And just the way that is, that's just the way things are, right? Um, and so, yeah, so yeah, so yeah, so this is a Filipino singer. Um, uh, and so yeah, pretty interesting stuff, though. Anyway, today is also Random Act of Poetry Day 2020. Yes, so read my poem. As you know, I'm a poet, Heerak Kim. Just type in Heerak Kim on Amazon um, or in Barnes and Noble. You can see my poems. You can read my poems, yeah, or listen to audiobook versions of it. Um, Yeah, tonight is the debate between Mike Pence and Kamala Harris, and people don't really know what to make out of Mike Pence. People don't remember what he was like in 2016, and they're looking at this debate to see whether he is worthy to become president in 2024. So will he be like Charlie Brown? Good grief. Charlie Brown. But as we know, Charlie Brown is like a loser. I mean, he's a loser that people like, but he's a loser nonetheless. Will Mike Pence be like a loser who never wins? Never gets the girl. I mean, he married a wonderful woman and have beautiful children, and they're very smart. But what he really wants is obviously to be president of the United States, right? So the question is, will he become a prince of United States? Um, being a president is like being a prince, right? Prince, king, those are sometimes interchangeable. Or will he just like, leave the office after, this term, and then kind of recede into the background like Dan Quayle, who was vice president for George Bush. Yeah, some people are not destined for greatness, So the question that people will be asking is Mike Pence destined for greatness? Is he destined to be president in the United States in 2024? Or is he just a nice guy? Yeah, he's nice guy to have around. People like him, but he's not destined for any kind of greatness, or he's not going to do anything important, really. He's always someone's sidekick, Tonto to, or Robin, to Batman. Um, yeah, so yeah, I mean, who is Mike? What people will be looking at today is whether he can defend himself against attacks by Kamala Harris, whether he can um, make points that make sense, and become dominant in the debates, right? So that's what people are going to be looking at. Kamala Harris has a reputation, unlike Mike Pence. Kamala Harris has a reputation for being tough. People have seen Kamala Harris in the debates for the Democratic presidential debate. And many people actually see her as a very strong woman, very tough. And that may be the reason why Joe Biden picked Kamala, because as far as Joe Biden is concerned, Kamala Harris beat him on the debate. So Joe Biden wants to incorporate her into his team because he wants her to be like the, Kamazilla, 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 Kamazilla to for his team to beat Trump and um, Vice President Pence. I mean, look at Kamazilla, put the fear of God in everybody, Look at Kamazilla's face. Look at that face, in the front of you. I mean, Mike, I mean, he kind of seen as a nice guy, which is not a bad thing, but not if he wants to be the president. People don't want someone who everybody steps on to become the president, right? So, is he going to be like, give it to Mikey? He will eat anything, kind of like, yeah, he has no thoughts of his own. He's not going to punch back. Who is Mike? Everybody wants to know who Mike Pence is. So tonight's debate is more about whether Mike Pence deserves to be president in 2024 than anything else. If he can't beat Kamala Harris in a debate, no one's going to think he's worthy to be president. They're going to pass him over in 2024. So today is more about Mike, because everybody's going to be tuning in, especially because COVID-19 has shut a lot of things down. There's no other entertainment. So everybody's going to be watching. So Mike Pence has to come out punching, and he has to knock Kamala Harris down, right? He has to, like, people will say whatever they will say about Trump's debate with Biden. Nobody's going to say he was a wuss. You know what I'm saying? So he got his message across that he's not going to let Joe Biden walk all over him in the debate. So that's why I think Trump won, like landslide, on the first debate, because he didn't let Joe Biden walk all over him on the debate floor like Mike or McCain did with Obama. That's why McCain lost. He should have won that election, but he let Obama walk all over him. Because like McCain was a nice guy. Nice guys finish last, and that's McCain's story. He's a guy who, was a nice guy. He suffered in the Vietnam, POW camp, was tortured. He's a nice guy, but he's not presidential material. Yeah, that's what American people decided, right? I mean, there was no reason why he should have lost that election against um, against Obama, and also and yeah. So Mike Pence, this is his chance to shine in the spotlight. I mean, that's I mean, this is actually about him more than anything else. People are looking to see if he's worthy to be president in 2024. If he loses today's debate, he has no chance to become president in 2024. I mean, even the Republicans who are eyeing the Oval Office are sizing him up tonight. And they're all going to be watching Republican senators, Republican House of Representatives members, Republican governors. They're going to size him up to see, hey, if I run for Republican presidency primaries in 2024 against Mike Pence, do I have a shot? That's what they're going to be doing, all the Republicans. So tonight will mark whether Pence is an alpha male or beta male or gamma male or delta male. Like, I mean, everybody's going to be sizing up Democrats because Democrats want to win 2020 elections, Republicans because there are a lot of Republicans who want to run for presidency, like Senator Ted Cruz wants to run for the office of presidency in 2024. Marco Rubio wants to run as a presidential candidate in 2024. There are a lot of people who want to run to be president. Maybe even DeSantis, governor of Florida, may want to run to be president in 2024. We don't know who are really seriously considering it at this point. But anybody who's anybody, like governors, all Republican governors, all Republican senators, all Republican House of Representative members, who are like alpha males, are probably considering running in 2024. I mean, and tonight's going to decide whether they run or not. There are people like Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio, they'll probably still run, even if they feel intimidated by how strong Mike Pence is tonight. But there are those who will not run if they feel like, well, Mike Pence is dominant and, chance of winning is very low. But, today defines whether people think of Mike Pence as an alpha male, and this is his friends and foes, both sides. Or if it's a beta male or gamma male or delta male, that tonight will decide that. Because next 4 years is kind of like campaigning, right? I mean, whether President Trump wins or not, people who want to run for president in 2024 will, get their team together, as soon as the election is over, that things are going to start. Like Ted Cruz will start getting his team together, Marco Rubio, they both will run. That's like given. But so Mike Pence will start probably planning whether he wins or loses with President Trump. Obviously, if he wins, it helps him more than if he loses. But and also, second important thing is tonight's debate will actually decide whether Team Trump looks good or bad, right? I mean, if Mike Pence as vice president can show Biden, Kamala team that they're not going to be effective for the next 4 years, and American people agree with Mike Pence, then they're willing to vote against him, against her, Joe Biden and Kamala. So today is also about November 2020 election. I mean, it's not as strongly about 2020 election as it is about Mike Pence himself, as Mike Pence the man, Mike Pence the politician, Mike Pence the potential presidential candidate for 2024. So that's the primary thing everybody's going to be looking for, both his friends and foes. But yes, if he could land a knockout tonight, it will definitely help November election victory, right? I mean, that's a given. So everybody will be watching tonight. We have still a lot of people dying from COVID-19. 508 people have died in 24 hours. It's going to go jump back up again over 1,000 very soon. I mean, we're ushering in the flu season, or President Pence's COVID-19 diagnosis is ushering in the flu season. So, as you know, I'm predicting that millions of Americans will die, minimum 3 million, but up to like 30 million people will die in the flu season. That's 6 months long. I believe I'm right because science is there and we know how infections work. And so, confirmed cases are 7,504,116. Deaths are 210,972. But as important as COVID-19 is, tonight is probably more about the election. So we'll see how smart Mike Pence is. We know Kamala Harris is very smart. And I believe Mike Pence is very smart. But we have to see. They're going to go a mano, right? They're duking it out 1-to-1. We're not talking about like Mike Pence and a crowd of people, Kamala Harris and a crowd of people, right? It's just one person against one person, right? So it's just like any kind of boxing match. One person will be standing, one person will not. It's like a gladiatorial race, competition. It's like a fight to the finish in a way. So we'll see. Obviously, Kamala Harris wants to be vice president. She may even want to be president. Obviously, she wants to be president because she ran to be a president. So this is for Kamala Harris. It's not just about being a vice president. This is about 2024 Kamala Harris. If Biden loses today, she's definitely going to be on the primary for Democratic president in 2024. There's no doubt about that. I don't think anybody doubts that. So this is about Kamala Harris for Kamala Harris, obviously, So we'll see what happens. I thought, since Kamala Harris is kind of half Asian and she's from India, I thought, we'll kind of rethink, we'll talk about India. India's number one. They have 6,757,131 cases. That's a 2% rate. You have 104,555 who've died in India so far. So the country of her origin, her mother's origin, is having tremendous number of deaths. And they can have far more death in the flu season. So we'll see. Let's see what happens. Bangladesh is number 2. It beat Pakistan, which was number 2 before, but Bangladesh is now number 2 in terms of cases. 373,151 cases. Their death rate is 1%, but even if it's 1%, if you have more cases, you're gonna have more deaths. So they have 5,440 deaths so far. Eventually, they'll probably pass Pakistan at this rate because more people are getting infected in Bangladesh. And here's bad news for Philippines. Philippines has 329,637 cases. Now it's number 3. Philippines wasn't even in top 5. I mean, it's been climbing up and up and up and up. And so Philippines is a problem in terms of COVID-19 death in the flu season. We don't know what's going to happen yet, but it seems like Philippines are having a lot of cases. It's number 3 now. It beat Pakistan. Pakistan was number 3. And it seems like Philippines is climbing. Maybe Philippines will beat Bangladesh to become number 2. We don't know. They have 2% death rate, so they have actually more death than Bangladesh. They have 5,925 deaths. So if you're a Filipino, you may want to start worrying because that's not good. I mean, there's a climb now, and it could get exponential. That's how Brazil went to like 100,000 deaths. So that could happen in the Philippines. Eventually, boom. Pakistan is number 4 at 316,351 cases, and 6,535 have died, 2% death rate. And Indonesia is number 5 at 315,714. Death rate is 11,472. So in terms of death rate, India has the highest death, followed by Indonesia. Let's see what happens. I mean, death is spiking, but if you see this, it's mostly in South Asia or Southeast Asia. India, Bangladesh, Philippines, Pakistan, Indonesia. China, has no death basically. South Korea, North Korea, Japan, Vietnam, Singapore, Taiwan. These countries don't have cases or death, and it may be by intention because, as you know, I'm saying that China created my theory is that China created or manipulated a virus to create COVID-19. So obviously they want to make sure their area is not going to have COVID-19, right? And genetic makeup of East Asians, Korean, Japanese, Chinese, Vietnamese, they're very similar. And Chinese and Koreans, Japanese, they probably are from the same race. So like in terms of blood, they're probably the same, and that may be why China is kind of protecting their zone. Let's see what happens. Obviously, in the flu season, that's 6 months long. If death rates start spiking in Japan, Korea, and China, then we could discuss that a little bit further. But at least for now, it seems like there's really no death or cases, or very little, in China and around China. So that's something that we're seeing, which is kind of interesting. I mean, which kind of supports my thesis and theory that this COVID-19 is a biological weapons of mass destruction created by China to destroy United States and um, NATO allies. It seems like that may be true. Obviously, you may never find out because if it is, it's probably top secret in China. Even people in China don't know. You may have to have the highest security clearance to know, right? There are things like that in America. There are things in America which you need highest security clearance to know. So it's like that in every country. But if Mike Pence becomes president, he will have the highest security clearance. He may already have the highest security clearance, but he may not have equal security clearance as President Trump. So let's see what happens. Yeah, this is a random poetry day. So I wanted to share 3 poetry books of mine. It is global pandemic, and poetry is good. And I have this poetry series called Tulip, Tulip. I have 3 out in the series so far: Total Depravity, Unconditional Election, Limited Atonement poems. Although Tulip is 5 points of Calvinism, my poems are actually secular. And the reason I use the term tulip is tulip. I like the flower tulip. I like Holland, where tulips grow. But also, I saw the movie by filmmaker who created the movie Red, Blue. I forgot the third color. But there's this movie maker in France who made movies using colors, like trio of colors. And he also made movie using 10 commandments, but secular theme. So first commandment, second commandment, 10 commandments. So I thought, hey, well, why don't I do that? I could use Tulip, but have secular poems. So, but I use the terms of John Calvin, like total depravity, unconditional election, limited atonement. And thematically, there's some conversions. So total depravity poetry book kind of dives into the concept of total depravity, right, of human beings. And unconditional election kind of reflects on unconditional election as a concept. And limited atonement likewise reflects on the concept of limited atonement. So there are themes there. And there are a collection of poems throughout different periods of my life. You may be able to reconstruct parts of my life in the past using my poems because I wrote poems based on my experiences, my feelings, my thoughts. So based on the publication date, you will kind of see where things are. And some poetry, they mention the time. As you know, I have every Monday COVID-19 poems, new ones that are published on my Twitter account, Heerak #4 Congress, Heerak #4 Congress. So I write actively poetry, and the tulip is very popular in Holland, and as you know, Eddie Van Halen, who's of Dutch origin, died yesterday, and so I thought I'll share photos of my favorite Dutch women I met in Spain, Spanish speech. So I went to Spain for vacation when I was at Cambridge doing research on Jewish studies. just, like I was researching and it was summer. I said, hey, why don't I just relax for a while? So I flew over. I took a break from my intense Jewish studies research at the library at Cambridge University. And I met these two beautiful women on the beach, and obviously they're really beautiful. So I went over and talked to them. And they're from Holland, and they were like 18 or 19, I guess, just graduated from high school. And they were kind of like, taking a vacation after graduating from high school. Um, yeah, and so if you're above 18-year adult, you can get married. So if I fall in love with an 18-year-old, I will marry her, obviously. Um, yeah. So I had a nice time with them. They're really nice, and very beautiful, as you can see. But yeah, life is about more than work, and you know, uh, it's just there's beauty in life, and poetry, shows how beautiful life can be or life is. So I reflect on that, how beautiful life is, how beautiful life can be. And people who work, as your life is not your work, right? For most people, life is about you and your wife, who you love, you and your children, whom you love, you and your church that you go to, where you have your closest friends, uh, you know, uh, you know, eh, so life is not about work for a majority of people. Life happens after work, when you go home, during weekends when you go to church, So, and poetry often reflects on life outside of work. How many poems do you know where poets write about work? They write about life after work, like your dating life, your children, nature that you see when you're in recreational time, you're not at work, you're just like hiking or swimming. Yeah. So life is like that. Life is not about work. Work is a very small part, and people work so that they could enjoy their life, right? I mean, that's the point why people work. They go to work so that they can make money, so they could use the money for people who they love, right? So work is not the end itself, it's a means to an end. And people with families, people who've been, who are married, who've been working for a while, they understand that far more than people who just started working. People who just started working think like work is like school. They don't understand the difference between work and school, because their life, they've been in high school, they went to college, they don't really know what life is like. People who just started, um, because in school, like when you're in college, it's like everything kind of blends together. But when you're actually working full time, there's a very sharp distinction between like work life and your life outside of work, and that doesn't exist at colleges at a bachelor's level, whether you're doing bachelor's, master's, or PhD. Life is kind of like blending in the college setting. So new grads who work, they see things differently from people who've been working for a long time. Just difference in vantage points. And um, people in college, they think differently than people who generally work. Because people who work are normal people. Like I work at Virginia Hospital Center as an RN nurse, registered nurse, as you know. Um, and there are, I'm sure half of them, around half of them will vote for President Trump. About half of them will vote for Joe Biden. He may be a little bit more on either side, but there are people who all have different types of jobs. There are people who are security guards, who may have more people voting for Trump. Police, security. There are people who are registered nurses. There are doctors. There are physical therapists. There are occupational therapists. But and there are patient care technicians. But these are not the only people. There are phlebotomists. They come in like at 4 a.m. to draw blood. Um, but um, but there are other people too. There are people who work in, they cook and make food for the patients. There are people who cook and make food for cafeteria or, hospital restaurants. There are people who clean floors, janitorial staff. There are people who are accountants, right? Because you have to bill the patients, you have to send the bill to insurance companies. So people who are accountants. There are people who are kind of like executive people who kind of have to make sure there's a management streamlining, right? So there are people of all kinds of backgrounds. It's not like everybody's coming from the same background. Like if you go to nursing school, everybody's like a nurse or wants to be a nurse, so it's a very homogeneous population. So they may think similarly, but when you go to a hospital setting, people don't think similarly. There are a lot of people who think very differently from each other because that's work. It's like 100% full-time work. They make the money and then they have their life outside of work. And that's why, you know, um, people who go from college to work, they have an adjustment period because they're still in the framework of mind where they think they're like at school, but school's not work, and people are different. There are people who love Trump. There are people in the hospital who work at hospital who don't wear a mask once they leave hospital. They wear a mask at hospital because it's required at Virginia Hospital Center, like all hospitals. But they believe that you should not wear a mask. There are people like that who work in the hospital. Um, so as soon as they leave work, they don't wear a mask at all. There are people like that. They believe that you shouldn't wear a mask, and they're avid Trump supporters. As you know, I believe you should always wear a mask when you're around people. That's just, I think that's good practice from healthcare, but not all people think like this. I got a tweet from a Republican Party saying that there's going to be a barbecue for tonight's vice presidential debate at 8 p.m. And some may wear a mask, but it's a barbecue. People are going to be eating. They're not going to be wearing masks when they eat. So it's possible that 100% of the people won't be wearing a mask. And they may not wear a mask ever, unless are forced to wear a mask in their work or like when they're at Walmart. They're not going to wear a mask because they don't believe in it. Obviously there are millions of Americans who don't believe in the mask. And that's just part of America. There are tens of millions, maybe even over 100 million Americans who support President Trump. And, there may even be up to 100 million Americans who don't believe in masks. They wear it, because they have to. But they don't really believe that, you should wear a mask. Nobody has surveyed 330 million Americans to see what they think. But you just don't know, right? Just because everybody wears a mask at Virginia Hospital Center doesn't mean everybody agrees that you should wear a mask, right? They're wearing a mask because that's required in hospitals, but they may never wear a mask outside of the hospital, and that's why there's temperature check every day in case you have COVID. Because no one knows what you're doing at home, right? Yeah, so it's just that's what America is. That's what workplace is, and it takes people to adjust to work. College students, because they have these ideas based on their experience in college, thinking like work is like college. It's not like that, and some college students fail to adjust into the work setting because they don't understand that people are different. Like there are people who love Trump at Virginia Hospital Center. They're not going to tell you to your face, but they, if you go to their home, they're going to have Trump posters, Trump stuff, Trump shirt. They pay like $50 for a Trump shirt, right? And they don't even make, they may not be making that much money. There are people like that all over in every workplace. You just don't know because you're not invited to their home. Right? You don't know what they have in their home. But obviously, President Trump became president in 2006 because enough people voted for him. So sometimes people forget that there are people in every workplace: Virginia Hospital Center, Fairfax Hospital, Alexandria Hospital, Metzler Georgetown Hospital. educated as well as non-educated, you know. They're religious as well as non-religious, you know, people who support Trump, support people who support Biden, you know, they're everywhere, you know. You just don't know if they don't share, right? You just don't know. Um, yeah, but this is election year, so everybody, you know, has their opinion. Some people like to share it, some people don't like to share it, but you know, people have their opinions, you know, and they're going to vote. So it's an interesting year. But let's see, you know, let's see who wins tonight's debate. So, you know, they'll probably have a record turnout for today's debate just because, you know, people don't have any other entertainment. You know, people can't go to movie theater to have fun. People can't go to restaurants to have fun, really. People cannot go to bowling alleys or, you know, I mean, there aren't too many venues to have fun. You know, bars are closed in most places. So, yeah, I mean, you know, so that's why this election is like highly focused. Everybody's paying attention to it. Whereas, like, if it were in normal America, like 2016 America, majority of people won't pay attention to the election that much, you know, but this is different. There's no other entertainment but the election, really. So that's why tonight's debate is going to be significant. If Vice President Pence can visibly beat Kamala, I mean, he may secure his victory for 2024, you know, because everybody's watching, you know, Republicans and Democrats and independents and people like in other parties like, you know, Constitutional Party or, you know, there's different smaller parties. And so, yeah, so it's going to be interesting what happens tonight. But you know, you can also read my poetry, you know, between commercials. Generally, I guess there isn't a commercial, but you know, you could read my books, you know, before the debate, after the debate, and throughout the coronavirus season, just to relax, you know. Yeah, I think you'll like my poems. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So you know, I'm glad you tuned in. You know, this presidential election is going to be in several weeks. It's going to be exciting what happens. I guess next week is a debate between President Trump and Joe Biden. So let's see. I mean, I think first debate, President Trump won hands down. That's my assessment. Um, and I think majority of Americans see it that way. That's how I think. That's my assessment on the issue. Obviously, no one's going to know until the election day. Obviously, you know, you could win the debates and still lose the election. That is also possible. But let's see. You know, momentum. My feeling on this is, you know, Joe Biden has lost, and if Kamala Harris loses tonight, um, you know, I think, you know, it's going to show. Uh, you know, people talk about it. You know, family members generally talk about it. You know, who won, who lost. You know, and I think, you know, our country being what our country is, you know, we like movies like Rocky, we like movies like Karate Kid. Winning is everything in America, right? We don't make movies about people who struggle and lose, right? Because that would be like not movie worthy, right? There are a lot of people who struggle and lose. We don't make movies about them. We only make movies about people who struggle and win. Winner takes all. You know, that's America. Yeah, people may feel pity for you for a fraction of a second if you struggle. But if you lose, nobody wants to really hear about it. Nobody wants to make a movie about it, write a book about it. They're only going to make a movie about people who struggle and win. And you know, how many people do you think struggle and win? Less than 1% of those who struggle. You see what I'm saying? You know, for every one person who struggles and wins, there's like 99 who struggle and loses, right? We don't celebrate people who struggle. We don't celebrate the process. We don't care what you did to struggle, the pain that you had. I mean, I care, but you know, I'm saying generally people don't care. Um, they only care if you win. That is everything. Winner takes all. They don't care how much you struggled. If you lose, you know, they'll say, "Oh, poor sucker," you know, and they may generally feel bad for you, but they're not going to dwell on it. They're going to move on. They only care about winners. This is America. America is about winning. It's not about losing. It's not about the process. It's about the outcome. Only thing that matters in America is the outcome. It doesn't matter how you struggled during the 3 quarters. If you have a quarterly report that is good, nobody cares how much you struggled during the quarter. All they care about is the final quarterly report. Did you give profit to the company, or did you have a loss for the company? They don't care what happened during the 3 months. They only care about the final report. I mean, they care if, when they audit stuff, but, when you're at board of, advisors or, company board, you're not going to, you don't have time to explain everything. You just talk about the quarterly report final results, throughout the year and what you did to achieve that, yeah, I mean, so bottom line, right? Virginia Hospital Center is there to make money. They need patients to come in to make money. So does Innova Fairfax Hospital. So does Innova Alexandria Hospital. So does MedStar Georgetown Hospital. So does Children's National Hospital. So does George W. Hospital. There's an economic dimension to everything, yeah, and and you have to make sure that there's a profit coming in, right? Because you lose the profit, CEOs get fired, CFOs get fired, COOs get fired, so money has to come in, this is America. We are a capitalist nation. We're not going to keep a CEO, CFO, COO when money is gone, That's why a lot of companies are going bankrupt right now, because no money, they're not going to keep the workers on if there's no money. Money has to keep coming in, right? Donations have to keep coming in. But more than donations, you need patients coming in. If you're a hospital, if you're like Walmart or Giant, you need customers to come in. One patient coming in, obviously, you want to save their life, but you're getting paid for the services, that you provide. So that's a very important thing, Yeah, clinical nurse leader, as you know, I'm a clinical nurse leader, and a lot of time is spent on that. How do we reduce cost at the hospital, and how do we increase your value? Value of every nurse, value of every tech, value of every service. So clinical nurse leaders are what we call horizontal leaders. Clinical nurse leaders work with the nurses, patient care techs, with respiratory therapists, physical therapists, phlebotomists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, physicians, surgeons, and other staff, dietary, nutrition, to maximize efficiency, increase motivation of the workers, because without motivation, people may not be able to perform at their optimum. Because if you have a lot of people calling in sick because they just are not motivated, then obviously you're going to lose, your efficiency, and that could cut into costs. So keeping people's morale up, motivation up, that is a very important part of what being a horizontal leader is. And clinical nurse leaders are horizontal leaders. So in a sense, like clinical nurse leaders are experts at building teams and maintaining morale in the team, and making the team very efficient, maximize each member of the team in their specialization, but also as a group dynamic to make it efficient. So that is our role in the nursing world, in the healthcare system. And I'm certified as a national at a national level for being a clinical nurse leader. So I am by definition an expert in that area. Yeah, I mean, obviously, we're professionally trained for that for 2 years at Georgetown University. It's a very good program. I would encourage you to go to Georgetown to get clinical nurse leader master's program. If you graduate from a college with a bachelor's in a non-nursing field, then you can come to Georgetown if they accept you. Obviously, very competitive. It's one of the best schools in the country. So you may not get accepted, but the deadline is like November. I think it's like November 1st. I would encourage you to apply, because I think If you receive the bachelor's from like George Mason University, Georgetown University, George Washington University, American University or Catholic University of America or Howard University, and you're living in this area and you want to do something to help people, and you want to be a leader. Obviously, there are a lot of post-bachelor's program where you're not trained to be a leader per se, and you could go to those. They may be easier, but Georgetown University is training you to be a nationally certified clinical nurse leader, which other programs in the area do not do. I mean, there are programs there's a program at Johns Hopkins, I think, that does also clinical nurse leader program, training program. So if you want to play a leadership role and that's important to you, then you would come to Georgetown University's Master's in Clinical Nurse Leader program because you want to be playing a leadership role in a hospital setting. But if it's not important to you that you play that role, then you could go to another nursing program like at, George Mason University has a 1 year. You could be a nurse in 1 year after you get a bachelor's degree. So you may want to go to that program, Obviously, it's shorter, and you don't get a master's, and you don't get certified as a clinical nurse leader, right? But if you just want to work as an RN nurse, George Mason University's program may be the best because you go in 1 year later, you're out, right? It's very quick. So and that program is competitive too. It's not easy to get in, but if being an RN nurse is the most important and you don't really care, you become a leader, or you may be like, well, I want to become a leader down the road, but that's not my priority. Then you go to George Mason's University. I would say that's probably the best university if you just want to practice an RN nurse and you have a bachelor's degree. 1 year, you go in, it's very intense for 1 year, you're out, you're working as a nurse. There are George Mason University 1 year nursing program students doing their nursing clinicals at Virginia Hospital Center. They're all really nice. I like them all. And it's good to see them. But, I would recommend George Mason University 1 year program if you're just interested in going to the nursing field right away, saving money. If you're a Virginia resident, it's much cheaper. But you're not going to be certified as a clinical nurse leader. And you're not going to have a master's degree. But and George Washington University has a very good program as well. It's a great university. Their program is 1.5 years, but it's great. I mean, you may want to apply to all three programs and see where you go. Obviously, each program has different emphasis. That they have they're strong in certain areas. They emphasize something else. One good thing about George Washington University is it's in DC. So if you're living in Washington, DC, it's an easy commute. You don't need a car to commute. You can live close by. You could take the subway. So it's convenient if you're living in the city already. Or if you want to live in DC, then it's probably the most convenient place to go. Georgetown University doesn't really have ready access to subway like Georgetown University doesn't have ready access like George Washington University. I mean, George Washington, they have their own subway stop. Georgetown, you either have to get off at Roslyn Station, which is in Virginia, and then take a shuttle to Georgetown University, or you have to actually stop at George Washington University stop and take a bus from there. So it's not as easy to get to. And when you're doing a very intense program, time is everything, especially if you don't have a car. Even if you have a car, it's hard to park, if you're at Georgetown. George Washington, it's hard to park too, but you have Metro stop right there. It runs like every 5 minutes or 10 minutes. So those are things that you want to consider. I would say those are the three best nursing programs for those who have bachelors who want to become nurses that exist in this area. I mean, I like my program the best because it gave me a master's degree, which is higher than bachelor's degree. My logic was if I'm going to get a nursing degree after bachelor's, it's just better to get like a master's degree. That way, it helps you when you want promotions. It helps you when you, even when you're trying to, pay is the same. To be honest with you, whether you go to George Mason University, George George Washington University, Georgetown University, when you graduate, you start out, the pay is the same. But promotional potential is higher for Georgetown because it's just master's program. I mean, but it'd be similar for other master's programs too. Like Johns Hopkins or other programs with Masters of Clinical Nurse Leader program. But I would say those are the three best programs for those of you who have bachelors. So yeah, I mean, I would encourage you to apply to Georgetown. Deadline's coming up on November 1st. I believe it's November 1st. You got to double check with Georgetown University School of Nursing, but I just apply, even if you don't think you're gonna go. I mean, if you just graduate from college and you're in this area, Virginia's 8th District, Arlington, Alexandria, Falls Church, and Fairfax County, it doesn't hurt to apply. I mean, you apply and then you could decide later. You may not get in anyway, but even if you get in, you don't have to go if you don't want to go. So it's worth the application. And when you get accepted, you may say, "Hey, it's a process, right? It's going to take a few months for them to decide whether they'll accept you, and by that time, you may know for sure whether you want to go or not." So I would recommend putting in an application if you're a bachelor's person living in this area, like if you're living with your mom and dad or whatever. Most of you are unemployed, right? You graduated in 2020, you don't have a job anyway. So you're trying to figure out what to do. COVID-19 is forever. So it's not like you're going to have a job next year if you don't have a job this year. So, I mean, and you may want to save lives of people who have COVID. And it's a good profession being a nurse, Yeah, it's risky, but it's you're saving lives, so it's a good thing. I'm glad that you checked in today and watched this show. As you know, it's a daily show, so check in tomorrow as well. I'll give you updates that will help you and your children survive. I share things that which can give you direction during COVID-19 that may help you, professionally as well, in other ways. So check in tomorrow. Tell your children or adult children or your parents, cousins, uncles, nieces to watch the show. Because it can help them, survive COVID-19 and other things related with COVID-19, like the horrible economy we're in as well. So so I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. I hope that you'll be well and that your family will be well too. And I'll probably talk about tonight's debate at length tomorrow. So see you tomorrow. Bye.